Hey, what's up? Well, welcome to another edition of The Mandatory, a live show. Thank you so much for rocking with us. Remember, if you like the content, make sure to follow us on our social media channels. We're at The Mandatory TKO. Also, if you have a couple of minutes and you're listening to this on the audio side, because you can find us on the audio side, leave a rate and review. Give us a 5-star because that helps the channel grow. Lots to get into. It's a massive fight week. We're going to get into all of these fights. There's also another fight that's not on this card that we are going to give you our favorite bet for. That's Subriel Matias and Liam Paro. I think you might know which way Bryan is going to lean with that Puerto Rico flag in the back. Just a little bit of a hint there. But by the way, this is an interactive show, so make sure to drop some comments. We will be getting to all your comments. By the way, guys, we are also going to be doing a post-fight show. So after Tank Davis and Frank Martin are done, we're going to hop on the live. So make sure to join us, kick it with us, and we'll be breaking down the entire fight, probably the card, because the card is actually pretty solid, I feel like. But Bryan, before we get into the main event, why don't we start off with the co-main feature, which I think is just as good as the main event, because David Benavidez is moving up in weight class, fighting at 175 now, and he's going to be taking on the former champ in Alexander Gvozdyk. And straight up on the money line, it's pretty wide. David Benavidez is a minus 700. Alexander Gvozdyk is a plus 480. What do you feel about this line? Is it a bit disrespectful to the former champ in Gvozdyk? And also, David Benavidez is moving up in a weight class, and he's a minus 700 for this fight. How do you feel about the line, and how are you betting this?
All lines in boxing are pretty disrespectful when it comes to the favorites. Look, I think of all the underdogs, this is an interesting one. Gvozdyk has a shot here. I don't think he's going to win the fight, but I wouldn't blame somebody for sprinkling on a near 5-1 underdog here. For David Benavidez, I think this is an interesting fight for him. Coming off moving up to light heavyweight now. This is for an interim title, we should mention. David Benavidez was previously the interim champion at super middleweight and is not interested in waiting for Canelo Alvarez and is instead going to fight this at this weight class. So I think Benavidez is going to win this fight, honestly, but I wouldn't blame anyone for betting on Gvozdyk. To me, I would take the over, though. I'm more comfortable taking the over than a method of victory. My bet here is over 8.5 rounds. It's up to 9.5. That's probably my limit, but I jumped on 8.5 early at minus 142.
So is that just your complete bet for the entire fight? You're just going to take the over instead of picking a winner? Or are you saying you're also betting the over?
I'll take a shot at Benavidez late between rounds 7 through 12. But the over is my favorite bet for this fight because I do think, look, Gvozdyk lost to Artur Beterbiev a few years ago, then took a long layoff, and he's been on a winning streak ever since. But he boxed really well and was ahead on 2 scorecards before that. So I think he can implement some of those same things before he inevitably tires out. And Benavidez is obviously dangerous because of his stamina and punching power and speed combination. So I think Benavidez gets him late, if anything, but I don't think I don't think this is going to be like an early stoppage unless he just catches him, which could happen in boxing and with David Benavidez. But to me, I'm taking the over.
Yeah, and going back to the fact that Gvozdyk also took care of Artur Beterbiev. In that fight, he was actually beating Beterbiev, and then the 10th round came. He knocked him down 3 times, and they stopped the fight because Beterbiev's power is like unreal. David Benavidez has power as well. It's a different type of power, but he's also moving up in a weight class, which I think he'll fit good in that weight class, but this is his first fight. So I don't know if he is going to be getting that knockout in this fight. There's so much talk about it possibly going to the cards, but at the same time, you talked about, Gvozdyk, he ended up retiring. He took like 3 years off, and then his last 3 fights have been against opponents that aren't as good as a David Benavidez. He's kind of just getting back into it. But I think because of that, because he took that layoff and then he came back, he's a little bit more refreshed, as you could say. Like, he hasn't been taking a beating, right? So in this fight, David Benavidez moving up in a weight class, I think it's going to be really interesting. I think early on, Alexander Gvozdyk is going to be winning those rounds, but I think David Benavidez would pick it up because his work rate is so crazy. So he's going to be, that guy in the ring that's going to be the aggressor, and he's going to come forward. He's going to have a high work rate. And I do think that David Benavidez does get the stoppage. If it went to the cards, I would not be surprised. But I'm actually going to take David Benavidez to win, and I'm going to take it in rounds 9 through 12 at plus 260. I think there's a little bit of value there. I think if it happens in the championship rounds, because we're also forgetting, and a lot of people who haven't seen Alexander, Gvozdyk fight, he's a former champion. And so I think that will also play into it. I don't think it's going to be a layup for a guy like David Benavidez. If it
Right.
happens, hey, I won't be surprised. It's the monster. But I also wouldn't be surprised if Alexander Gvozdyk ended up taking this one to the cards and ended up having a good fight. If there's one fight this weekend where I could see an upset, it would be this fight, because David Benavidez is moving up in a weight class and because he hasn't been there before. So I think this is the most interesting fight of the weekend. And if David Benavidez has a great performance, right, and he ends up winning, we also should mention this is the title eliminator. So the winner of this will get either Dmitry Bivol or Artur Beterbiev. So there's also the business factor as to why David Benavidez is looking forward to this fight, moving up in weight class. And the Canelo fight, just not going to happen. By the way, we are going to get to your comments. Well, let's go to one right away. IMPK13, front of the show, big weekend in boxing. Yes, very big weekend in boxing. We're going to get into some more stuff later on. Also, remember, if you like the content, hit that like and subscribe button. So, Bryan, you like the over, just before we get away from this fight, you like the over in this fight, and you are taking David Benavidez?
Yeah, yeah. But I like the over more. Like that's my main bet. That's what I put in like my Action Network previews and whatever. Like I think Benavidez probably stops us late, but ultimately our bets go hand in hand here because I like over 8.5 rounds, which
Yeah.
is what I took a couple days earlier, and you literally have Benavidez stopping him from 9 to 12. So if you play both, yours obviously has better value. I just think that
It's hard to
like
pick this one.
yeah, and with David Benavidez, I thought he would stop Caleb Plant. After seeing what Canelo did, he did not. I didn't think he would stop Andrade. He did. So for me, it's kind of like I'd rather just take the over here because I'm not quite sure. And to me, David Benavidez is like someone may beat him at some point, I'm sure. Like I don't think he's unbeatable, so to speak, at 168, 175, but I'm not necessarily sure that Gvozdyk is going to be the one to do it. I do agree, like there's upset potential here, and I think Benavidez is being a little overvalued. But after this fight, assuming Benavidez wins, and he should, I'm much more interested in talking about like, all right, if he's really going to get the winner of Beterbiev versus Dmitry Bivol, man, I don't know who I'm taking in any scenario in that world, but
I will.
I'm excited to see how Benavidez looks in this weight class, though.
If I was to pick today, I would pick Bivol and Beterbiev over the monster. But that's also because I haven't seen him fight in this weight class. So
Sure.
if he has a great performance against Alexander Gvozdyk, yes, I could possibly see me changing that. But I still think, Dmitry Bivol, he's on the pound for pound list, probably top 5. And in that fight, essentially before Beterbiev got hurt, I was going to rock with Beterbiev. So I think it would be
Mhm.
hard for me to pick a guy like the monster, but let's see what type of performance he has. I will get to one more comment and then get into the main event for that card. Brewski in front of the show. Glad to be here, y'all. Excited for the card in its entirety. Honestly, it's low key explosive. It's a great card, Bryan. This is a great card that they're putting on.
It's a really good card. Um, I actually just did an interview with Eric Raskin from Boxing Scene about this card, specifically because it was weird that all the main card fights pretty much have plus 700 favorites, plus 500 underdogs or 500-ish, and minus 700 favorites. So it's kind of like we talked about which has the most upset potential. This is one of the fights we talked about, along with the next one, which is the main event. But yeah, this card is really good. And also, Elijah Garcia is going to be in the prelims. We had him on the show. We interviewed him, and it was one of our favorites. Unfortunately, that fight got pushed back, but he's still going to fight Davis. That's going to be interesting. And yeah, I think, hopefully PBC gets more active because some guys are starting to walk. Top Rank just signed Vito Mielnicki, so that's another former PBC guy. But now there's talk about PBC potentially coming back this summer with your boy, Stephen Fulton, going to be on that card in August, allegedly, and Caleb Plant, who we both like. So hopefully that's something that comes to fruition.
Yeah, or maybe the Saudis are going to buy boxing and then we'll be under one banner like UFC. That's a different discussion that could go for like 20 minutes. So we're not going to get into that. Let's get into the main event here because this one, Bryan, I'm extremely excited for it because I think it's going to be a great fight. I'm actually not too mad about this line though. Gervonta Tank Davis minus 700.
Really?
Frank Martin is a plus 480 because Tank to me is the best lightweight in the world.
700 though. I mean,
Yeah,
look,
700. Frank
he's
Martin hasn't fought his type of competition yet.
understood, and he could have lost his last fight. Like he very well could
Yeah.
have lost his last fight. But 700, man.
No,
I
yeah.
don't like when we do that. But to be fair, yeah, I don't like. We'll get into our preview. But I
If
don't think Tank's
David
gonna win.
Benavidez is a minus 700 against a former champ and Alexander Gvozdyk, listen, this makes sense to me. This makes total sense to me.
Okay,
That's
I'm
all
not
I'm
saying
saying.
you're wrong.
I'm not mad at the line here.
I
I'm
just
not mad at the
wish
line.
I just wish we didn't get lines like this in boxing. But
Yeah.
I understand why we do. I understand it.
Well,
Totally.
Vegas is like, well, I don't
Like,
want them to make money. Let's make this at minus
right.
700.
Correct. Like
That's what Vegas is trying to hustle us, right? That's the whole point why the line is like this. But Bryan, okay, so you're not feeling the line too much. You feel like it's a little bit disrespectful to Frank Martin, which listen, I could see that, right? But how are you betting this one and how do you see this one going?
Gervonta Davis is kind of like the way I bet Deontay Wilder, where I immediately look for the knockout. I look for the knockout or technical knockout. Um, I like Gervonta Davis to do this late. I took him between round 7 through 12 at plus 135 earlier this week, is what I've been saying. I wanted the knockout, technical knockout straight up because I think there's a chance that left uppercut could land early, but Tank is also not really a slow starter. Like we've seen him however many years now. He generally finishes guys late. Called Ryan Garcia in the 7th round, called Hector Luis Garcia in the 9th round, so on and so forth. Frank Martin, I think, is very skilled, like probably underrated going into this fight. I don't think he's going to beat Gervonta Davis, and I think that's fine. Like we should have more fights where guys are putting their undefeated records on the line. This is what we want as consumers, as people who cover the sport, as fans, whatever the case may be. So, but Tank finishes this one to me. The knockout, technical knockout straight up is minus 175. So I opted for more value there, 7 through 12 plus 135. I also want to note Raheem Palmer of The Ringer was trying. He texted me. He was trying to like get this boosted on FanDuel, and it is Gervonta Davis by knockout. So not technical knockout, just knockout. If you think it's going to be one shot and done, boosted at FanDuel to plus 430. I figure I'd mention that because there's some pretty tasty value there if you think that left uppercut is probably just going to land, or if it's going to be an overhand left, because this is going to be a southpaw versus southpaw fight. But that's something I may sprinkle on as well.
You know, it's so interesting because Frank Martin is actually pretty defensively sound. Like he's actually pretty good defensively. I think a lot of people are sleeping on him in this fight. He does have the speed. He's a great counter puncher. The only issue is that Tank is better in every aspect. In every aspect, especially with the power. Tank's power isn't real. He's born with it. And Frank Martin has power as well, but it's not that type of power that Gervonta Tank Davis does. I think in this fight, Frank Martin is going to have some moments. The thing about Tank is he doesn't have a high work rate, but he's extremely accurate. And when he's accurate, he's deadly. And so in this fight, I think Frank Martin is going to be a test for Tank at the same time. I don't think this is a fight where, like, we look at the line here, minus 700. It's not going to be that easy of a fight. I think this is a very tough opponent for a guy like Tank Davis. And here's the thing, Frank Martin, it's his time to go. We've been talking about this for a minute now. Frank Martin has kind of been that guy that's been in the background, and now it's his time to go. Let's see how he does under these bright lights and if he can be a superstar. And let's see how he performs, because I think the interesting fact after this fight is what actually happens with Frank Martin, what type of performance he has. Now, being said that, I think Tank is going to win. And I think Tank is going to actually do this a little bit later because I'm giving some respect to Frank Martin. Now, normally I actually initially wanted to take Gervonta Tank Davis by KO or TKO between round 7 through 12. But because I do think Frank Martin is a guy that is defensively sound, great counterpuncher, I think he is going to be able to land on Tank Davis, has power as well, not power like Tank, as I mentioned. But I do think this goes a little bit longer than people might expect because I am giving some credit to Frank Martin. I just think by the end of like between rounds 9 through 12, it's going to be too much of a punishment for Frank. And that's when I think Gervonta Tank Davis is going to be able to get this done. So for my bet for this one, I'm going to take Gervonta Tank Davis to win in rounds 9 through 12, and it's a plus 250. So exactly the same bet for David Benavidez, and they had the same line. So why not? Why not bet the
Sure.
exact same way? And
Sure.
that's how I'm rocking with this one, Bryan.
How old do you think Frank Martin is?
Frank Martin has to be, what, 27, 28? Or he's a little bit older than that?
He's 29.
Okay, I was pretty close there. Yeah,
How
so
how, how much older do you think Tank is than Frank Martin?
isn't Tank younger than him?
He's older by 2 months.
Okay.
So when you say Frank has to go, think about how much longer we've seen Tank in title fights. Like the first world title, I think this was the first world title he ever won, but it was very early on. I was actually at this fight. This was when Floyd Mayweather promoted a card at Barclays Center, January 2017. Tank Davis was on the card. He knocked out Jose Pedraza, who we both like very much. Caught him with a ridiculous left uppercut, and that was that. And that was a featherweight title, and that was in 2017. So Tank's been in world title fights for 7 years straight, roughly. This is going to mark 7. Whereas Frank Martin, like, he started later, turned pro later, whatever the case may be, had the breakout fight against Ali Rivera. So that was not that long ago. But yeah, in terms of having to go, like, this is your shot, Frank. And hopefully he accounts well enough for himself to where we'll want to see him again. But this is a stacked lightweight weight class. So I think he for him to win, he needs to put on, and I don't mean winning the fight because I don't think he's going to win the fight, but for him to win from a business standpoint, he needs to put on like a really good showing, probably win a handful of rounds, and maybe even be up on the scorecards by the time
which he
Tank
might
finds him,
be.
which he might be.
Because
Yeah.
Tank doesn't have a high work rate, and I think Frank Martin's a great counterpuncher. It's just like, will he be able to take the punishment from Tank? Because Tank is a great body puncher. Tank reels you in. He sets traps. He's so smart. His IQ is amazing. And when I just take a look at the checklist, Tank just does everything better than Frank Martin. Frank Martin's a really, really good fighter, but he also doesn't have the experience. He has, 18 fights, 12 by knockout? Tank has 29 wins, 27 by knockout. So it's also the experience factor. People watch Tank for pay-per-views. There's only so many pay-per-view fighters. Tank is one of those guys. And so I think it's going to be a really good experience for Frank, and whatever happens, he kind of, well, depending on how he fights. Because, I mean, Tank could set a trap and have you out of there right quickly. Like, you never know.
Yeah.
But Frank Martin, like I said, defensively pretty good. Let's get to some comments, Bryan, before we move on to the final one. Let's go to our boy Ryan Hong, who always brings us some great comments all the time. Ryan, thanks for talking with us.
Ryan was killing me earlier.
Frank Martin beating Tank. Wow, tell us why you think that, Ryan. Also, Liam Paro gonna whip Matias. Ryan, are you playing with us?
Someone else in the chat.
Someone
Was it
said that
Hustleman?
too.
Hustleman,
Yeah.
Hustleman says he got Paro with the upset.
Major upsets this weekend, and Ryan wants Bryan to put on that shirt again.
I know which one he's talking
I
about.
know
I'm not
too.
doing
I
it.
know too.
I
He's
gotta
not
watch
wearing
it,
it anymore.
actually.
He's not wearing it anymore because of what you said to him, right? We got King Coop. King Coop, thanks for rocking with us. Tank winning easy. A lot of people have Tank winning, no surprise. That's why the line is like that. This is an interesting one from Hustleman, friend of the show. Thank you, Hustleman, for joining us. I think we see Tank get hurt or hit the canvas tomorrow night. Very possible.
Errol Spence thinks so. Errol Spence seems to think so as well.
Well, he has to. I mean, come on, they're part of the same. They're cool, right? If he doesn't say that, like, that's not his boy, right?
Errol Spence wants to fight Tank, but that fight will never. I don't even know what weight class you do that at.
Errol Spence just wants to fight anybody after his last performance. You know what I mean? Like, he has no room to talk. I don't want to see Errol Spence talk anymore.
Yeah.
I don't, because his last fight was so bad. Come on, man.
Tank's been pretty funny in the press conference stuff and everything else, other than not showing up for the grand arrivals. But I mean,
Was he getting
Tank
his
does.
hair braided again?
I have
Because I
no
know,
idea.
because I know for Tank and Ryan, Bryan was at the press conference in New York, and he was just waiting, and I was waiting at home for him to send back the stuff so I could put our stamp on it and get it uploaded. And I'm like, yo, where is he? And Bryan's like, I think he's just getting his hair, and he was getting his hair braided because we saw the episode after. They did that they always do that documentary or whatever, kind of like 24/7 style. I forget what it's called or what it was called at the time. Blood, Sweat, and Tears? No, that's Top Rank.
Yeah. That's
I
Top
forget.
Rank.
I forget which one the Showtime one was called, but
R.I.P.
yeah.
I think he was 2 hours late, something along those lines.
And Bryan was
And
just waiting.
Ryan Garcia was like, "Oh, why you so late?" And then Tank was like, "You would show up early. You're a good boy." And I'm like, Tank just has some funny ass disses. The last thing I want to
Yeah.
ask on this fight before we finish with Subriel Matias and Liam Paro briefly, um, where does Frank Martin rank in terms of? We're gonna have a better answer after the
Yeah.
fight, but as of now, where does Frank Martin rank in terms of guys who's fought Tank? Because a big part of the talking around this is people are saying Tank doesn't really have a resume, and I,
I'm gonna
I
take a look at Take's resume because I know he got some names on there.
he does, and
Dude, he fought Leo Santa Cruz, and people need to start putting respect on Leo Santa Cruz's name because Leo Santa Cruz is a former champ.
I think people
That's
don't.
ridiculous
I
that people
think what
don't give him
people, I
credit for
think
that.
people take, but I think people take it away from him because it was a big jump for Leo Santa Cruz to get to 130.
It
Um,
was. But he's
but
still a former champ,
Leo
man.
Santa Cruz, by the way, was fighting really well before he got knocked out. Like, this is the thing about Tank. It's kind of, he's like Deontay Wilder with skill, like with a lot more skill.
Yeah. People
Like
sleep on a Tank
he'll
skill too.
he'll give you some of those early rounds as he's figuring you out, and then he'll really pounce in the opening in a more controlled way than Deontay Wilder does. He's only got 2 decisions. One of them was Isaac Cruz, he broke his hand, and the other one was a 6-round fight early on in his career where he dropped his opponent twice. And if it wasn't a 6-rounder, he probably would have got the stoppage in the 7th or 8th.
Well, already I see some great names on here. Jose Pedraza, who I'm really big on, great fighter. I
That
hate when
version of
he's
Jose Pedraza was undefeated too.
22-0. Like I mentioned, Leo Santa Cruz, Mario Barrios, who was a former champ as well, and Tank moved up for that fight at 140. Isaac Cruz, Rolly at the time was undefeated, great power puncher, and in that fight, I had Rolly winning before Tank knocked him out. I don't know what you guys had it, but I had Rolly winning that fight before Tank knocked him out. Hector Luis Garcia is a tough fight. Don't care what anybody says. And Ryan Garcia, like the star power for that.
I like Hector Luis Garcia a lot.
Yeah.
His performance against Lamont Roach was disappointing, but also credit to Lamont Roach for winning that fight as a 2-1 underdog, I believe.
And as you can see, we're complete nerds. So if you're a casual fan, you're like, who has Tank fought? But if you actually watch boxing, you'll be like, these are some really good names and some tough opponents. It's tough because I still think I know that Leo Santa Cruz made the jump, but I still put him like top 2 of Tank's wins. Like I'm really high on Leo Santa Cruz. I'm not being biased. I am. But I mean, let's be serious. I'm being a little bit biased here for Leo Santa Cruz. But
let's get to a couple comments here too, because we got some. And for people who want to sound off on Gervonta's resume, like feel free to do so as well. Ryan Hong says if Tank wins just by decision, he's not stopping Frank Martin. I don't think that's the case. It wouldn't stun me, but I mean, he's only got 2 decisions, so we'll see. We'll see what Frank Martin really has. Hustle man, I think we already put this one up, but Tank Benavidez KO 8-10. Got Paro with the upset. We'll get to Paro in a second.
By the way, Hustleman, bet on that because the odds for Liam Paro beating Subriel Matias, like that's crazy. Like I wonder what that is actually. Let me look. Liam Paro is a plus 490.
Plus
Put some money
1100.
on that.
I think it's plus 1100 by decision and by knockout, like each of them. Something along those lines. Maybe 1,000 straight up. Brewski, I think Benavidez struggles more than Tank tomorrow night.
Yes, I believe so.
As much as I like Frank Martin, I probably agree with this, but it's more about Tank than it is about Benavidez, I guess.
What I do want to say, and we'll get into this in the post-fight show, if Tank wins this, I want to see him fight Lomachenko over Shakur Stevenson.
We'll see. Is Michelle Rivera the best win between these 2 fighters? No, I would not say that. Is it Isak? It's not Isak Cruz, is it? I think some people would say Isak Cruz is the best name on Tank's resume. I don't. I don't.
I don't agree with that.
I don't know.
I don't agree with that. I actually think at the time, because Isak Cruz is who Isak Cruz
Actually,
is now. Jose
actually,
Pedraza, you could put. I would put Leo Santa Cruz. I would probably put those two guys above him. I'm sorry, I would.
you would put Ryan Garcia, probably, but I don't know what version of Ryan Garcia. Like it's hard to say because
Mario Barrios as well. Yeah, there's a few names.
oh,
Hustleman just put Mario Barrios as well.
I hope Pacquiao doesn't. Oh God, Pacquiao. The rumor about him fighting Mario Barrios coming out of retirement. Like, just stay retired, bro.
I
Like,
don't want to see Pacquiao. Come on
I'm
now.
good. I'm good. Play basketball or
All
something.
right.
All right, let's get into our last fight.
Yep. Subriel Matias minus 750, straight up on the money line. Gotta love these lines from Vegas. Liam Paro is a plus 490, so huge underdog. So if you're thinking Liam Paro is gonna upset Subriel Matias in Puerto Rico, might I add, sheesh. That would be like the upset of the year, I feel like. But if you want to place money on it, I'd be pretty down for you to win that type of bread because you'd probably get more than a G depending on what you bet. If you bet like $100, you probably get a G stack, right? Bryan, how are you betting this one, and how do you think it's gonna go?
I don't like the bets available on this fight. He's like minus 300 to win by knockout or technical knockout. Subriel Matias has knocked out everyone he's ever fought, including the one loss that was later avenged. He's also unfortunately killed somebody because of a boxing match. RIP Maxim Dadashev. That probably should have got stopped a little bit earlier than it did. Fights in Puerto Rico. Card is, I mean, like I'm probably going to be watching this one more closely than other people. I will have both cards on, and I'm going to have one eye here and one eye here. Thank God there's no NBA Finals tomorrow night. There might not be any after tonight. The way the Mavericks are playing, I got Subriel Matias winning this one, and this is a smaller play for me because I don't really love the bets available. Definitely putting the knockout in a parlay, but in terms of a straight up leg, we'll go Subriel Matias between rounds 5 through 8 at at plus 170. Actually, really good odds on that. Subriel Matias has gotten 5 of his last 6 stoppages in that range, 5 through 8. I think Liam Paro is good. Like, he legitimately beat Montana Love in a real way. Montana Love was heralded as a top prospect before he threw Steve Spark over the top rope, Royal Rumble style. And I think Subriel Matias is just, he's ridiculous. Like, I was going through some of the copy box metrics, and his volume punching is elite at the 140-pound division. He lands more than anybody else. He lands more power shots than anybody else. He also takes a fair amount, but the percentages are crazy. His power punches, he lands about 38% of them, and he throws as many as anybody else at 140 in terms of the elite fighters in the division. I think Liam Paro is going to have a difficult time with that. Subriel Matias, like Felix Trinidad, likes to get his ass kicked in the first round before then pouring it on as the fight progresses. So I would even say live bet Subriel Matias after the first round because he will probably lose it because he often does.
Yeah, and I think that's where Liam Paro is going to have the most exciting time of the fight is early on because I think Subriel Matias, he's probably going to get hit a few times, but he knows how to take a hit. And then I think it's just going to be too much for Liam Paro because of the way that Subriel Matias fights. He has the power. He has the power shots. He gets to the body, and it's unreal power. And he's going to be the aggressor. And it doesn't matter how much you punch him in the face or punch him to the body. He's going to continue to come forward and land shots on you that you can hear from your couch. And you'll be able to hear it from Puerto Rico because that's how loud it is. I'm going to take Subriel Matias in this one in rounds 5 through 8, just like Bryan. I think Liam Paro is early on in this fight going to have some good moments. He's going to box well. And I do think he's going to land on Subriel Matias. But I just think the work rate, the power punching of Subriel Matias is going to be too much on Liam Paro. It's in Puerto Rico. This is set up for Subriel Matias to have a great night, and I think he's going to have one, and I think he's going to get the stoppage between rounds 5 through 8, and as you said, Bryan, plus 170? Is that right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
where I found it
great
earlier
odds.
this week.
Those are great odds. But I think Subriel Matias gets it done. Liam Paro is tough, but the power that Subriel Matias has, even in his jab, is crazy.
Like, this is an interesting fight like stylistically, I actually don't like that Subriel is minus 750 favorite because he fights that volatile, like all action style. I think he's a little bit like he's not as bad defensively as people seem to think, but he is going to get touched in this fight. He has a ridiculous chin. He won't have that forever. He's also sneakily like approaching his mid 30s. So how much longer is he going to look sort of indestructible? I don't know if that's going to be the case. I just think for this particular fight, he'll get the job done. We'll see after that. I kind of wish he was like 4-1 tops. I don't love that he's minus 750. But Liam Paro's good. Like he's a legit fight.
All right, let's get to some comments. Hasselman, as dangerous as Matias is, he still gets hurt, and Paro can crack. True. I'm taking Paro late stoppage. It might sound crazy, but I don't know. Paro slept on. I think Paro is slept on. I just think Subriel Matias is one of the top fighters at 140 pounds, and people don't want to see him. I want to get to this comment, though, by Bryan. When Danny Garcia had his homecoming in Puerto Rico, he lost the same fight. It's going to happen with Matias. Puerto Rico is cursed. First off, Danny Garcia is from Philly. I mean, I know his roots might be from Puerto Rico, but it's totally different, I feel like.
I mean, find me the fight that Miguel Cotto got his ass whooped in Puerto Rico. You know what I mean? Like, Felix Trinidad, I don't think any of the fights he lost were in Puerto Rico either. Bernard Hopkins was at the Garden. Roy Jones Jr., I think, may have also been at the Garden. Rinky Wright definitely wasn't in Puerto Rico. So I would debunk that. I think Matias is in a great spot. And Liam Paro, look, he was gonna fight, if you remember, he was gonna fight Regis Prograis last year. He had to pull out of the fight. That's how we got Danielito Zorrilla. We were both like, hey, should have been Arnold Barbosa because he had beat Zorrilla before that.
Yeah.
And Danielito almost won that fight against Regis Prograis. So, and that was a hometown fight also. But I think that's part of why we get minus 750 here is because of where the fight is. Australia, Puerto Rico, they're nothing alike.
Yeah.
I did appreciate that at the press conference though. Subriel Matias was he tried out some English and Liam Paro tried out some Spanish. So there's some respectability going on.
Yeah, two great guys. Steven says if Matias can't plant his feet, it'll be a long night for him.
He'll plant his feet.
He's gonna have to make the adjustments. I don't think he will in the first round.
No,
he's gonna struggle in the second round.
He's gonna lose the first round. 1,000%.
I think he's going to struggle a little bit in the second round as well, but I think he'll eventually figure it out and make the adjustments. He's pretty much just gonna. I think Liam Paro is gonna have so much success in that first and second round. Then Matias's corner is gonna say something to him in Spanish, and he's gonna come back and take a bunch of hits and just keep moving forward and gonna be landing on Liam Paro. I think this one has the potential to be a banger. To be honest with you.
Me too. Liam Paro, he needs to box and not stay in the pocket. If he stays in the pocket, that's what Matias wants. That's where he wants all of his fights. He needs to be able to move. But Matias is also really like he's not one of these power fighters that struggles mightily at cutting off the ring. At least we haven't seen it yet. Like Isaac Cruz, everybody loves him. He struggles at times cutting off the ring. Matias hasn't had those issues yet, not to the same degree.
Yeah, for sure. Bryan, any final comments or thoughts before we get up and out of here?
I'm excited about the undercard too. So I will just shout out Yankel Rivera. He's in a fight that he's a slight favorite for. It's going to be very interesting. That's against Victor Sandoval. Can't wait for that. And I'm very excited about Stephanie Pinheiro. I think Stephanie Pinheiro is going to be a fucking problem. And she's in a real fight. It's not one of these boxers who's like bragging about all their wins coming up in like whatever women's weight class, and they're fighting women who are like 8, 10, and 3 with like no knockouts. Like this is a real fight that she's 6-0 with 2 knockouts right now. She's fighting Tapia Castro, who's 7-1 with 2 knockouts. And, it's Puerto Rico versus Mexico. So, that's probably going to be a banger. The one loss on Castro's record was avenged in a fight after by decision. So, and she's beating a bunch of other undefeated fighters. So I think that's going to be a quietly one of the better fights on the card.
For sure. Let's get to one more comment and then we're going to get up and out of here just because we got some great comments. Hustle Man. Yeah, this one hasn't officially been confirmed, if I'm not mistaken. They have to officially announce it, but Inoue and Akhmadaliev.
All those things. It looks like it's going to happen though.
Yeah, which is going to be exciting because Inoue, he stays busy. And that's why always at the top of the pound for pound list. Let's see what happens this weekend. Let us know how you're going to be betting these fights. Also, if you like the content, hit that like and subscribe button. Follow us on our social media channels. We're at the Mandatory TKO. Thank you so much for rocking with us this morning. We'll be back tomorrow night for the post-fight show. Remember, you guys can come and join us. We'll be talking all things Tank Davis, Frank Martin, and we're going to see as well what David Benavidez does at 175. Lots to get into. We're also obviously going to talk about Subriel Matias and Liam Paro as well. So we're going to be breaking it all down tomorrow night. Make sure to join us for the post-fight show. And thanks so much for joining us today. And good luck and enjoy the fights this weekend.